Hi everybody and welcome to this week's Sam Says with me from the FPL Family. This week I'm going to be focusing on those clubs that play in game week 31. So we're going to look at what happened in game week 29 for the likes of Wolves and Spurs and Burnley. And we're going to have a little think about what that means for us in terms of our FPL planning going into game week 30. But most importantly, what it means for us in terms of player availability for game week 31 and who might be showing their hand as the best players from those teams. But before we go there, we have to quickly mention the postponement of the double game week this week. So we were all expecting double game week 29 with Manchester City and Arsenal playing again on Wednesday evening, but that game has now been postponed due to the coronavirus outbreak. We don't yet know where that game is going to go. We don't yet know when City particularly are going to manage to fit in all of these fixtures, because obviously they have another delayed fixture when they should have been playing in game week 31 to come, as well as hopefully progression for them for the Champions League this year. So interesting times in the Premier League in terms of where these fixtures go. It's going to be a bit of a juggling act to get them in there, but if you own KDB like I do, didn't play on Sunday, he'll be auto subbed out now for whoever your first substitute is on your bench. Unfortunately for me, it isn't Lundstrom, and I'm sure for a lot of people it might be. But yeah, no game for Manchester City and Arsenal in this double game week. So they revert back to the single game week and will score the points that they scored on Sunday. Disappointing for those of you that captained a Manchester City or Arsenal asset on the back of there being a double game week this week, but it is what it is. We move on. They will obviously have a double game week at some point over the course of the rest of the season to make up for this postponement of this game. So we now need to move our attention and focus on game week 31 and the blank game week, and how we get our FPL teams into a position where they are ready to go with the clubs that we have playing in game week 31. Okay, let's start with one of the games that we were all kind of really interested in, and one of the teams that we've all kind of already invested in and that we're looking to treble up on for game week 31. That's Wolves. Wolves 0, Brighton 0 this game. Really disappointing from an attacking point of view from both sides in reality, but obviously more positivity for the Wolves defence. Bonus points went to the Wolves defenders alongside Matty Ryan. So Sias with the 3, Bolly with 2, Cody and Matt Ryan with 1 each. So all about the defences this time. This is a continuation really of Wolves' decent run of defensive returns. Over the last 4 game weeks they have returned multiple clean sheets. So no Premier League side has kept more clean sheets than Wolves since game week 25. They have really done incredibly well defensively, really tightened up, and that's since Bolly came back into the side. Since Bolly arrived back in the Wolves team, has made a massive difference to them defensively. Doesn't seem to matter at the moment which defensive unit and which formation they play. All of the Wolves defenders doing really well. Matt Ryan obviously benefits when Traore isn't playing. However, actually, from a defensive point of view right now, Wolves looking really good, and the Wolves defensive double up definitely looking on for game week 31. If you can only go for one, or you're not sure which of the Wolves defenders you want to go for, there is a brilliant table attached to the scout notes for this match. Talks about how many points per match the defenders are averaging at Wolves between game week 25 and game week 29 that we've just seen. So Doherty averaging 8 points per game, by far and away the best defender and the best defensive asset to own from Wolves right now. Obviously he is significantly more expensive than the others, so that will make a big difference in terms of whether you want to or whether you can afford to invest in him. Obviously if you're on a free hit, absolutely he's the one to go for, but if the budget's really tight and you can't really afford to go with Doherty, then there are some other good options. Patricio, between the sticks, looking really good, averaging 6.6 points per match right now. Now obviously that's the clean sheets, it's the bonus points and it's the save points that he's accumulating. So really positive from a keeper point of view, particularly if you're currently keeperless. If you've just got Henderson, for example, and then Button as your spare keeper, Patricio looks like a really nice option, and that will give you a nice way into the Wolves defence if you don't want to change your back line. Otherwise then, Sias, Cody and Bolly averaging 6.4, 5.6 and 5.2 respectively. And then with Johnny and Vinagre, we need to kind kind of see what's happening there. If Johnny is out longer term and Vinagre is going to play, he could look really good. Now, he came in when Johnny got injured. He's earned 66 points in total so far this season. He's definitely worth keeping an eye on because he's so much cheaper than the others. If Johnny is going to be out longer term, he could be a nice option. But if Johnny's only got a short-term injury and the press conferences suggest that he might be back relatively soon, then for me, it's worth going with one of the others because, as I've already mentioned, you can hold these Wolves players from now until the end of the season. So it's a really good idea to invest in one that you would be happy to hold from now on. If you're trying to decide between the cheaper ones, Sayas, at the moment, he's the one that they're aiming for at corners. It was Bolly, it seems to be on Sayas at the moment, so from attacking returns point of view, he could be a really nice option. If we then move into the Wolves midfield, there's only really two options. One of them is a bit of a non-option at the moment, unless you already own him, and then it's a decision to make, and that's obviously Adama Traore. This week, Traore is benched for the third time in 4 game weeks. The dislocated shoulder injury is continuing to cause problems for him. It does appear that he does indeed need some surgery on that, probably. It just depends on when that surgery is going to happen. Is it going to be soon? Is it going to be till the end of the season? Can he play 90 minutes? Is he capable of kind of just coming off of the bench? We don't really know. We're going to have to wait to see what Santo says about him going into game week 30 and then make a decision going into game week 31. The reality is, for me as a Traore owner, I've got other fish to fry in terms of game week 31. It's very difficult to take out a player and replace him when you know that he probably will get some game week minutes. It's unusual for Traore not to come on at all. We saw him come on in this game and he did make a big difference to that Wolves attack. So we'd expect and hope that he's going to get minutes in game week 31, and we just have to hope that there's some attacking returns there. If you don't own him already and you want, to look at the Wolves midfield, then Moutinho is probably the one. He ranks 5th overall for chances created for midfielders this season, so it's kind of ticking over those underlying stats. Not really achieved his full potential in terms of FPL returns this season, but the underlying stats are definitely there and could be worth a punt if you're looking for another midfielder ahead of game week 31. So in terms of those Wolves attackers then, Jimenez and Jota. Jimenez, this was only his 3rd blank since game week 23. Jota has 5 attacking returns since game week 32. Both of them on really good form right now. I think this was probably just unlucky. It was a bit of a blip in their run that they've been on. For Jota, actually, his run has been very much kind of compartmentalised into this part of the season, and he's looked really good over the last few weeks. Jimenez, much more consistent over the course of the season so far, and if you run the members area stats on the two of them and do a comparison, it's Jimenez that's by far and away the best option for us as FPL managers, but obviously the budget means that Jota is significantly cheaper and therefore can offer you a route into that Wolves attack, and he does look really good right now. So whichever way you want to go is definitely a good idea ahead of game week 31. It's definitely not a bad idea either if you have the space in terms of your Wolves allocation to have both of them. Okay, from a Brighton point of view then, Basuma was key for them in terms of breaking up that Wolves play. He was also really good individually in terms of attacking play for Brighton. Now, he has held his space for the last 3 games, even though Dan Stevens is back from injury, so could be a really nice FPL asset if he continues to hold his place, and also so long as Dunk doesn't pick up his 10th yellow card of the season. He's currently on 9 yellow cards, and obviously if he gets booked again in the next week or so, or at any time now really between now and the end of the season, he will receive a 2-match ban, which wouldn't be great if we're looking at assets to bring into our FPL teams that can do more than just 1 week for us. At this stage, if we're making transfers, we're looking to try to make them a bit more longer term and to help us to get through to the end of the season. So it's something to watch for in terms of Dunk himself, but also in terms of that Brighton defence as a whole, because without Dunk, I do think it would make Matt Ryan in goal and also players like Basuma less of a fantasy option, because they really do benefit from having Dunk in goal. And obviously Dunk is a nice asset because from an FPL point of view, he has those attacking returns in his locker too. Okay, let's have a look at the members area stats for this game then. So if you look at the scout notes for this game, right at the bottom in the members area stats, you'll see some position maps, and they show the position of Vinagre during this game. Now, it's really interesting to note where he is playing. Although obviously a defender for Wolves, there were no Wolves players higher up the field than him, other than Jimenez and Jota in this game, so playing incredibly far forward if he holds his spot, if Johnny is out for a while, could be a really nice option, both in terms of picking up those Wolves clean sheets, but also in terms of some attacking returns potential there for him too. Only 2 players managed a shot on target this whole game. That was Jimenez and Proper for Brighton. Sias has been the most threatening of the Wolves defenders from corners in those most recent matches, so keep an eye on that as well moving forward. Not the best game ever from a Wolves point of view, but they still look really good going into game week 30 and obviously into blank game week 31. All right, third game I've picked out then, Crystal Palace 1, Watford 0. Now this one's good for 2 points of view for us as FPL managers in terms of both of these clubs playing in blank game week 31. So Palace winning the game 1-0. Jordan Ayew again picking up attacking returns this week with the goal. MacArthur with the assists. 3 bonus points for Gaeta, 2 for Dan, and then 1 for Jordan Ayew, who scored the winning goal in this game. Now, as I've mentioned already, numerous times so far, Ayew did indeed score the Palace goal this week, and he now has attacking returns in all 3 of Palace's most recent Premier League matches. So, looking really positive for him, given his price tag. He's still really, really cheap. So, if you are looking for a player that will get you through game week 30, will get you through game week 31, and you can hold and still allows you to have those big FPL assets across the rest of your team, look no further than Jordan Ayew. He is now, with the injury to Tosin, he's now looking likely that he's going to score and play rather week in, week out, and potentially there's some attacking returns available there as we've seen in the last 3. So I think for me what I'm saying here is that actually Jordan Ayew, although, you know, popular early on in the season because of his price tag and then didn't really amount to much, at this stage in the season when he's playing in the blank game week and has 3 game weeks on the trot of attacking returns and is still cheap and will be a nice enabler for you to bring in those bigger assets that will have later double game weeks, the likes of Manchester City and Arsenal, who are missing games already, and then obviously the guys that are missing out again for the FA Cup. They'll all have double game weeks coming up at some stage over the rest of this season. So to be able to have Jordan Ayew there as a cheap third striker might just be a really nice option. Since Dan and Cahill have been back as centre-back partners for Crystal Palace, they are yet to concede a goal. So defensively, Crystal Palace looking a lot stronger than we have seen of recent weeks. But Scott Dan and Gary Cahill making a massive, massive difference there. So if we're looking ahead to blank game week 31, which of course we as FPL managers all are, maybe actually the Villa defence might not be such a bad shout. And we talked a bit earlier on about keepers and the potential for goalkeeping options with Patricio. Maybe actually Gaeta comes back onto the radar as another good option. Got the 3 bonus points in this game and kept the clean sheet. If he can replicate something like that across game weeks 30 and 31, he might be a really nice option to make sure that you have a playing keeper available to you in game week 31. Okay, so from a Watford point of view then, they do play in game week 31 as we've already mentioned. They were unable to build on their impressive performance against Liverpool, and I think in part that was due to the amount of space that Liverpool gave Sarr. That space wasn't afforded to him by Watford in this game. He was still the driving force for the Watford attack. Very much the way that the Watford attack went was through Ismaila Sarr, but didn't have the same kind of space and the same kind of availability necessarily as he did in that game against Liverpool the week before. He was definitely, though, the main outlet for the attacks. It's just that the Palace defence and midfield kind of surrounded him and they were completely aware of his role in that Watford side. Watford did very much miss Deulofeu in this game. Down that left-hand side, Pereira stood in, but actually what we saw is that the Watford attack mostly then went down Sarr's side rather than equally as we would have seen in previous weeks with Deulofeu being there. Now from an FPL point of view, that's actually nice for us as Sarr owners because it means that the likely attacking returns are going to come from him as opposed to being shared down the other side. Whilst Watford didn't keep the clean sheet, they actually still did look fairly solid defensively. It was just 1 or 2 opportunities for each side. It wasn't a great deal of attacking returns potentially in this one. It was a fairly quiet and relatively scrappy game in reality. So it does mean that we have another keeping option there available to us. We've already talked about Patricio earlier on. We've talked about Gaeta in this game, but there was also Ben Foster. Didn't keep the clean sheet this time around, but potentially a little bit unlucky. And at home, as Watford have their game next week against Leicester, they are a lot better top for clean sheets at home so far this season, joint top. So we should hopefully get some more attacking, some more defensive returns, some clean sheet potential there from Foster in 30, which could lead nicely into game week 31 if you are looking for a replacement keeper. Okay, so member stats then for this one. No one particularly busy in the penalty area in this game. Ayew, Benteke and Doucouré all managed 2 penalty area shots, which actually isn't a lot when we look at Premier League matches. Benteke and Doucouré created the most chances within the game with 4 each. Sarr played in 8 crosses, although only one of those was considered to be a key pass in the game. And Doucouré was top for expected goal involvement in this game for Watford, although with a score of 0.3, really low and really disappointing in terms of what we would expect from a Premier League side, to have such little high expected goal involvement from the kind of the guy that was scored top for them over the course of the game. Okay, a final game then, and another game where we have both clubs playing in game week 31. So Burnley 1, Spurs 1, goals for Wood and Dele Alli, assists for Rodriguez and Lamela, and then the bonus points to Wood, McNeil and Lloris. McNeil and Lloris both getting 2, so no 1 bonus point in this game. This was Chris Wood's first start since returning from injury. He did score back in game week 28 when he came on for 32 minutes, but came back into the starting lineup for this one and scored again. So 2 in 2 for him, or 2 in 1.5 matches for him, which is great in terms of his returns. Nice cheap option in a Burnley side that's playing really well at the moment. So Chris Wood could be an absolutely brilliant differential pick ahead of blank game week 31. Lloris was back in goals for Spurs, having missed the last Premier League match through injury. He made 5 saves in this game, earning himself the save points and a bonus points. And that was mostly as a result of the fact that Burnley had 21 attempts, 7 of which of those were on target. So still a couple of mistakes from Lloris in this one, and we saw a few mistakes from him again in the Champions League this week as Spurs went out to Leipzig. So difficult to pick Lloris right now, difficult to pick anyone from a Spurs defence in reality. Burnley were really unlucky that they didn't score a lot more goals in that first half. Spurs team completely changed at half-time. They were incredibly poor in the first half, defensively all over the place. And I think in part that's because the formation and the structure of the Spurs defence keep changing, as well as the personnel who are playing in defence, and in terms of just where the personnel are playing. So sometimes we see Vertonghen at centre-back, sometimes he's out on the wing. It's very difficult to form any kind of consistency. And then obviously Spurs lost Sanchez through injury just ahead of the Leipzig game. Now we need to watch the press conferences later on in the week to see what Mourinho has to say about him. But without Davinson Sanchez also to play in defence, Spurs looking incredibly light defensively. Obviously going forward it's a problem already with Bergwijn out through injury, joining Kane and Son on the injury bench for Spurs. So very difficult to pick a Spurs player at the moment. But actually in the second half Spurs did look a lot better. The 2 subs that came on completely changed the game, particularly Lo Celso absolutely ran the show for Spurs in that midfield and made Dele a much better asset up top. He was a little bit isolated in that first half, not enough pace coming out from the defence and through the midfield, but much better. Lamela then won a penalty very early on in the second half, 5 minutes in, which Dele converted, and then Spurs were unlucky not to score more actually later on in the second half, although Burnley could have also scored. So I think from both a defensive point of view, it's a no-go on Spurs, but obviously Pope still offering really nice keeping option, and Charlie Taylor as well for Burnley, good defensive options there. In terms of the midfield, obviously for Spurs, probably you're looking at Dele Alli if you want to bring in a player ahead of 31. There's potential in Lo Celso, but he might just be the player that assists the assist constantly, which isn't great for us as FPL managers. Lamela and Lucas Moura also looking more likely to start with all of the other injuries that we've got going on, although Lamela isn't really up to full fitness yet, and Mourinho has repetitively said that he isn't really fully training with the team yet, so he might be still a bit of a risk of rotation during game weeks. Well, the next fair few game weeks is with the reality with him. So from a Spurs point of view, it's probably Dele Alli, maybe Lo Celso, maybe Lucas Moura, depending upon where you want to go, but it's certainly Dele Alli that's playing up top for Spurs right now. And then obviously from a Burnley point of view, you've got Dwight McNeil, who looks brilliant and looks like a really nice differential pick ahead of game week 31, and obviously then Chris Wood as a really nice option up top. So yeah, really nice, promising players there, particularly from a Burnley point of view ahead of blank game week 31. Alright, finally some members area stats from this one then. No player in any Game Week 29 fixture ahead of that Monday night game, obviously against Leicester, because the scout notes were published before that game, had as many shots as Wood did in this week. His expected goal involvement was 1.49, which was the second highest of any Premier League player across the weekend's action, Saturday and Sunday. It was Dele Alli that was the spearhead of the Spurs attack, and had 3 of Spurs' 4 shots in the box, with Lucas Lamela and Bergwijn not managing any at all between them. McNeil put in 11 crosses, which was the highest number across the weekend, although actually only 2 of those crosses were successful. And actually, often, as we've seen in this game, in a 1-1 draw, it's often not the players that are involved in the goals that got the bonus points. McNeil collected 2 on Saturday because of his off-the-ball work, so 8 recoveries, which were as significant as his successful dribbles in his bonus point baseline. So he had 6 successful dribbles of the ball, of course, as well in that game. So more unlucky, I suppose, if you are a Chris Wood or a Dele Alli owner, that you didn't see some bonus points for either of those in that game. Okay, so running out of time to go through matches, so let's have a look at the scout notes for some of the other teams that are playing in blank Game Week 31. Let's start with Liverpool. So in this Liverpool match, Firmino was the busiest Liverpool player in terms of shots in the box, big chances, but actually only one of those was on target. Not really the Firmino that we've kind of known and loved over the course of some of the rest of this season at the moment. Is doing the right things, just not getting those final shots away and not managing to finish the opportunities that he is getting. Salah was more likely to score as both of his efforts inside the box were on target, and that kind of feels like it's the way that it's going right now. Salah was also top of this match for chances created, and that's encouraging for us as an FPL point of view. Suggests that he can be relied upon even if Liverpool's form isn't quite there. He is still getting opportunities and making opportunities and trying to make the best of them. Finally, when we look at Firmino at Anfield, it's incredibly strange. It really is odd that he is so much better away from home this season, and it's something that we really do need to bear in mind over the course of the rest of the season, because you kind of do feel with Firmino right now that half of the games while he's away from home, there's some really good attacking potential there, but when he's back at Anfield, not so much potential, and that's difficult then to invest in given how much it's going to cost. For me, from a Liverpool point of view, it looks like you want the treble up going into Game Week 31. If you can afford it, Salah and Mane with one of the defenders looks like the best way to go about it. If you can't, 1 or 2 of the defenders and then 1 of Salah or Mane. If you are still looking to go with one of the midfielders, then maybe take a look at somebody like Milner, maybe even Oxlade-Chamberlain, depending upon what Klopp says in terms of Henderson's fitness and availability going into Game Weeks 30 and 31. So something to keep an eye on with the Liverpool squad, but the clean sheets just aren't there currently for Liverpool defensively, so just be something to consider before we double up defensively going into Game Week 31. Okay, another team then that play in blank Game Week 31 are West Ham. They lost this week to Arsenal. Let's have a look at the members area stats for West Ham then. So Antonio was afforded 3 big chances more than any other player at the Emirates this weekend, and that does bode well for Game Week 31. He was really the best asset on the pitch. Bowen looking promising as well. If he continues to get starts, he could be a nice cheap asset from West Ham. Rest of them, not very many opportunities created by the West Ham attackers right now. Something to keep an eye on in Game Week 30. Let's see, going into Game Week 31, they play against Spurs in that blank game week, a Spurs defence that is leaky at best, and they will be given opportunities because Spurs will go to attack in that game. So the Watford attacking options could be a good one, but I think we need to really carefully watch them in Game Week 30 to work out which of those attacking options are best. There are a few that could be good, but we need to work out which ones they are. All right, that's it from me this week then. It is more important than ever right now to keep an eye on those press conferences. Obviously, we've got fixtures being cancelled that will be rearranged, so we need to keep close ears on when those rearranged games are going to go and use that wisely and to our advantage. Keep an eye on the press conferences as well for updates on injuries, and bear in mind that there are still Champions League and Europa League fixtures to play this week, so before you make any transfers, think about what you're doing, think about your plans for Game Week 31 as well. I will see you next week for another Sam Says, where we're going to be looking at everything that happened in Game Week 30 and prepping ourselves for that blank game week in Game Week 31. Before you go, if you haven't already, drop us a like, leave me a comment and hit that subscribe button. See you next week, guys.